All right, I'm live. Yay, just making sure that everything is working. Okay, so I am both on Instagram and on Facebook. So if you're tuning in and I'm looking both directions, that's why. Welcome to day one of the Masterclass. And I'm really happy to be doing this. I'm excited to share all of this information with you. And let me know in the comments, feel free to interact during, and let me know how this information is resonating with you and if you're really picking it up, if you have any questions during. Okay, so for those of you who don't know me, my name is Allison, and I am a sexuality coach as well as many, many other things. I'm also an intuitive, and I'll tell my story a little bit. So I had this big kind of crazy awakening process happen in 2012. And when that happened, I had a lot of abilities come to me that I didn't have before. One of those abilities is the ability to channel and to bring information through. So I don't know if that makes sense, but it's sort of just being able to open up and receive information and then channel it through my voice. And so through that process, I've gained a lot of brand new information, things that I never knew about before. And so fast forward to about 2 years ago, I started getting information around sexuality and our sexual energy bodies and how all of that operates, the masculine and feminine polarities, and a lot of different things like that. So at the time, my history is growing up sort of in a Christian background, and it wasn't necessarily sex positive. And so I had a lot of shame around sexuality, and I had a lot of misunderstanding around sexual energy and what was really okay and what was not. And so through all of this intuitive understanding that's come to me, my goal has always been to be the teacher that I wish I had, to have someone tell me it's okay to be both spiritual and sexual, and actually that those two merge. Which brings me to today's topic: what is sexual energy and why is it important for us to understand? That's kind of why. The first reason that I'll give you is a lot of our society thinks that those two things are polarized, that spirituality and sexuality are two very different spheres, or they can only be joined in specific situations. That there are right ways and wrong ways to do things, and things like that. And so first I want to introduce to you that sexual energy and life force energy and Kundalini energy are three aspects of really the same energy force that's moving through the body when we're talking about sexual energy. So sexual energy is actually a very spiritual energy. It's our body moving through this very highly spiritual energy, and it's expressing itself in something that feels sexual. So something that I have come to know through channeling and through my intuitive practices is that when we have like an awakening energy occur to us, or a really intense Kundalini activation, that often feels sexual. And the energy moving through us isn't necessarily directly connected to a sexual act, but it is highly sexually charged, because our sexual body is actually very joyful and ecstatic and wonderful feeling. And you may know this, but a lot of times, like I said, we separate the spiritual and the sexual when they're one and the same, because this energy moving through our body, especially when it moves through unobstructed, is really, really highly, powerfully spiritual. It can take us to very spiritual places, very high consciousness places. So they're not separate, and I want to reiterate that that sexual energy, Kundalini energy, and life force energy, those are three aspects of the same energy. So they're going to feel very similar. Like I said, Kundalini activations or an awakening activation, those often feel sexual, and that can be kind of confusing, especially if you've got those ideas separated, that spiritual and sexual are two different things. We are meant to be ecstatic. And what I mean by that is that when one of the things that has come to me is that we're meant to hold a very high level of sexual energy in our bodies, a very high level of ecstatic energy. And this ecstatic energy is really quite overwhelming. It feels, I hate to compare it to drugs, but if you haven't had this experience and you have done drugs, it's a good correlation to make because it feels very similar. And so when we have this Kundalini energy moving through us and radiating out into our energy field, what's happening is we're actually going to feel ecstatic, as if we are on ecstasy. Ecstatic is a good word, and Molly used to be called ecstasy because I'm super old. So that is what I'm talking about here. It feels just like these waves of energy moving through the body, and it's highly sexually, it feels very highly sexual, but again, it's just that awakening energy, and it's our bodies acclimating to this higher level of, this higher frequency that we're receiving, essentially. And what we're evolving into as spiritual and human beings is being able to hold and carry a very high level of this energy. So you can imagine, another thing I can compare it to is riding that wave of orgasm, not, pre-orgasm or post-orgasm. It's sort of like right there in the middle, and it just feels so, so good, but you also feel charged in all of your chakras, including the lower chakras. A lot of times in the spiritual community, we sort of limit ourselves. We cut everything off, from the waist down, that the lower chakras are lower frequency energy and we're not meant to feel them, or we need to evolve them and repress them, or whatever it is. But that's not actually the case. The truth is that we're meant to expand in all of these areas, that we're meant to be very grounded, very highly sexual. I'm going through the chakras now, right? The grounding is that root chakra. The second chakra is our creativity, it's our expansiveness, our sexuality, and we don't need to reform it. We don't need to say, I need to be celibate now because I'm a spiritual person. It's actually, for many, many, many people, not always, but for many people, that we just allow that center to evolve and still have just as much fun as we were having before, in fact, way more, through our sexual encounters and through our sexual energy. So, the third reason that I want to bring up that it's really important to understand our sexual energy is that currently our world is sort of centered around shame. Our sexual paradigm often has a lot of shame ideas in it. And it looks like Facebook isn't working, so I'm just going to focus here. So there's a lot of shame. And what I want to explain about shame is that it's a very repressive energy. As we're moving energy through our bodies, we of course don't want to have these blocks because we want it to move unobstructed. It's sort of like a garden hose, or we could even call it, if it's that intense awakening or Kundalini energy, we can call it a fire hose of energy that's running through our bodies. And if we shut that down, it's going to leak out in other areas. It's going to essentially leak out because we can't stop it. But what it's going to do is sort of be painful. in many different ways. It can be painful physically or psychologically, spiritually. It can actually block our process, because all of those areas are included in the spiritual. It's not its own separate category. It includes the physical and the emotional and the intellectual and the psychological. It includes all of that because we are having a human experience. So all of those things are included in that. And when we repress that energy in any of those areas, then we're going to get that sort of fire hose effect of the energy leaking out in different ways. And when that energy leaks out in different ways, we're not being our full self. We're not living to our highest frequency potential. So a lot of times, and like I said, sometimes in the spiritual community, although it's really, sort of the paradigm that we're moving out of, is that this idea that the sexual and the spiritual are separate. And when people move through life that way and believe that way, it becomes fractured, and we block the energy through shame, through thinking that there's only a certain way that we can go about life and do this. And when that shame blocks the energy, then instead of being our full high frequency self and allowing the energy to run through, we are, leaking it out in other areas. We're out of alignment with ourselves, and then we really have a hard time progressing. So that shame blocks us in so many areas of life. We tend to sort of categorize sex or sexuality into one thing, but it really is the basis of so much of our lives. It is our life force, like I said. So I just wanted to briefly introduce all of those things. If you have a question, feel free to type it in now. And I'm going to, while I'm looking at all of you, I'm going to wave, hello, all the people that I didn't say hi to before. And I am going to tell you about this contest that I'm doing as a part of this week-long masterclass that I'm giving here on Instagram. So all week, today all the way through Thursday, I'm going to be introducing these different topics, and I'm holding a sort of contest with this for, and the prize is a free an intuitive sexuality coaching session with me. So as I said before, I do intuitive work, and we can dive into your sexual understanding through this process of a 1-hour coaching session, which is really fun. And it's very specific to you because of that intuitive aspect that I dive into. So if you want to win this, all you need to do is each day when you watch these videos, tell me an aha moment. And I want you to make a post. You can make it on Instagram or Facebook and tag me in it. And make a post about what you learned during this video. Share that. You need to do 3 videos out of the 4 videos. So you don't need to do it every single day, but you do need to do 3. And I'm going to choose a winner on Friday morning. All right. So just to recap, in case any of you have questions, I'm not seeing anything. But just to recap, our sexual energy is our life force energy. It is also our Kundalini energy. And we need to let it move through the body so that it doesn't become obstructed and shoot out in different ways, shoot out in sort of ways that bring us out of alignment with who we truly are on that expanded perspective. Because we're not just moving into higher frequencies, we're actually expanding. I like to say expanding more than sort of like moving into higher frequencies, because then we become very linear with it. And actually we're just learning so much, encompassing all of this human experience. We're diving deeper into the human experience, and we're also expanding into the higher frequencies. So I can't wait to hear what your insights are. If you have any questions, let me know. Tomorrow's topic, you know what? It's either going to be orgasm or trauma, and I can't quite remember which one I decided, but I will let you know in the comments. Okay, have a great day. Bye, guys.